Hello, welcome to ECBSC online classes. In this video, we are going to solve questions from previous papers, about 30 odd questions from previous CBSE board exam papers on the topic of real numbers. I hope you will enjoy the video. Please give it a like and share it with your friends so that it can benefit them too. Thank you. Let us start with questions. Question number 1. Euclid's division lemma states that for two positive integers a and b, there exists unique integer q and r satisfying a equal to bq plus r, and limits on r are given as 4 options. We have to find appropriate one. It is from year 2020, set number 2. Euclid's division lemma is stated as follows. Given positive integers a and b, there exists unique integers q and r satisfying a equal to bq plus r, where 0 less than or equal to r, that is less than b. It means answer is C. Choice C is the answer, right? Let's go to the next question. Show that any positive odd integer is of form 4q plus 1 or 4q plus 3 for some integer q. It appeared in 2020 compartment paper and 2019 set number 1. We have seen Euclid's division lemma. Now let's compare the given quantities 4q plus 1 and 4q plus 3 with bq plus r. When you compare these expressions, you can say that b equal to 4, right? If you go by Euclid's division lemma, you can say that r is going to be one of these numbers 0, 1, 2 or 3, right? A positive integer a can be written as a equal to 4q when r equal to 0, right? When r equal to 1, a can be written as 4q plus 1. When r equal to 2, a can be written as 4q plus 2. When r equal to 3, a can be written as 4q plus 3, right? And we know that 4 is an even number. It means any positive number multiplying 4 is going to be an even number, right? Since q is some integer, 4q is going to be an even number, right? When you add 1 to 4q, that is going to be odd number. When you add 2 to 4q, it is going to be an even number. When you add 3 to 4q, that is going to be again an odd number, right? It means 4q plus 1 and 4q plus 3 are going to be odd numbers, right? For example, if I take q equal to 0, 1, 2 and so on, 4q plus 1 becomes 1, 5, 9 and so on, right? Similarly, 4q plus 3 becomes 3, 9 and 13 and so on, right? So what we have learned now is any positive odd integer can be of the form 4q plus 1 or 4q plus 3 for some integer q, right? Let's go to the next question now. Use Euclid's division lemma to show that the square of any positive integer is either of the form 3q or 3q plus 1 for some integer q. Let's compare the options given with bq plus r such that you can say b equal to 3, right? And as per EDL, it is going to be r is going to be 0, 1 or 2. It means a positive integer a can be written as a equal to 3p because r equal to 0. When r equal to 1, a equal to 3p plus 1. When r equal to 2, a is going to be 3p plus 2, right? Now, square of a can be a square equal to, if I take a equal to 3p, that can be now written as a square equal to 3p whole square, that is equal to 9p square, right? I'm rearranging it and writing it as 3 times 3p square, right? If you do that and assume 3p equal to q, then what happens is a square, which is equal to 3 times 3p square, now becomes a square equal to 3q, right? Please take a note of this one. If I take a equal to 3p plus 1, then a square is going to be 3p plus 1 whole square, that is equal to 9p square plus 6p plus 1, right? Let me rearrange this and write it as 3 times 3p square plus 2p plus 1. You can write that way, right? So now if I assume that 3p square plus 2p, which is part of the parentheses, or the part of the brackets, as q, then a square can be written as 3q plus 1, right? Now, if I take a equal to 3p plus 2, then a square is going to be 9p square plus 12p plus 4. Let me rearrange and write it as 3 times 3p square plus 4p plus 1 time plus 1, right? When you do that, if I assume the expression in the parenthesis as 3p square plus 4p plus 1 equal to q, then I can write a square equal to 3q plus 1, right? What you have done now is when you take a equal to 3p, you are getting a square equal to 3q. When you are taking a equal to 3p plus 1, you are getting a square equal to 3q plus 1. When you take a equal to 3p plus 2, you're getting a square equal to 3q plus 1, right? It means square of any positive integer is either of the form 3q or 3q plus 1 for some integer. This is what we can say, right? Now, let's go to the next question, that is question number 4. Show that the square of any positive integer cannot be of the form 5q plus 2 or 5q plus 3 for any integer q. A positive integer a can be written as 5p plus r, right? It means as per EDL, r can be 0, 1, 2, 3 or 4, right? Let me start with a equal to 5p. Then a square is going to be 25p square. That can be written as 5 times 5p square. If I assume 5p equal to q, then a square is going to be 5q, right? Now, if I take a equal to 5p plus 1 when r equal to 1, then a square can be written as 25p square plus 10p plus 1. So if let me rearrange and write it as 5 times 5p square plus 2p plus 1. Now I'm assuming that 5p square plus 2p equal to q. It means a square is going to be 5q plus 1, right? Similarly, if I do a equal to 5p plus 2, a square is going to be 5 times 5p square plus 4p plus 4, right? If I take 5p square plus 4p as q, then I'm going to get a square equal to 5q plus 4, right? Now let me take a equal to 5p plus 3. Then a square is going to be 5q plus 4. Let me take a equal to 5p plus 4. Then a square is going to be 5q plus 1. Here, different expressions have different meaning for q. Please take a note of this point. What you have understood is when you take a equal to 5p, you are getting a square equal to 5q. When a equal to 5p plus 1, you're getting a square equal to 5q plus 1. When a equal to 5p plus 2, you're getting a square equal to 5q plus 4. When a equal to 5p plus 3, you're getting a square equal to 5q plus 4. When a equal to 5p plus 4, you're getting a square equal to 5q plus 1, right? So let me take a note of that. I'm getting a square irrespective of what a I take. I'm getting 1 of 5q or 5q plus 1 or 5q plus 4, right? I'm not getting 5q plus 2 and 5q plus 3 for any of the options we chose. It means square of any positive integer cannot be in the form of 5q plus 2 or 5q plus 3 for any integer q is proved, right? Let's go to the next question. That is question number 5. Prove that one of every 3 consecutive positive integers is divisible by 3. A positive integer a can be written as a equal to 3p plus r. As per EDL, r is going to be 0, 1 or 2, right? If I take a equal to 3p, the other consecutive integers are going to be a plus 1 and a plus 2, right? A equal to 3p is divisible by 3 because the quotient is 3 here, right? And if I take a plus 1, that is going to be 3p plus 1. that has got remainder 1, right? That's why it is not divisible by 3. When I take another consecutive integer, that is a plus 2, that is 3p plus 2, since remainder is 2, it is also not divisible by 3, right? Now let me go to r equal to 1. So a becomes now 3p plus 1. And other consecutive integers for this particular number is a plus 1 and a plus 2 again, right? So a plus 1 now becomes, sorry, a equal to 3p plus 1 is not divisible by 3 because remainder is 1. Let me see what happens to a plus 1. A plus 1 becomes 3p plus 2. That is also not divisible by 3, right? A plus 2 becomes 3p plus 3, which is divisible by 3, right? Because you will be writing it as 3 times p plus 1, and that p plus 1 can be a q or something like that. When you do, it is divisible by 3, right? Now, if I take a equal to 3p plus 2 for remainder r equal to 2, the other consecutive integers again are going to be a plus 1 and a plus 2, right? 3p plus 2 is not divisible by 3, whereas 3p plus 3 is divisible by 3. 3p plus 4 is not divisible by 3, right? When you observe these, what you have seen is when you have taken 3 consecutive integers, a plus 1 and a plus 2, only one of them is divisible by 3. Remaining 2 are not divisible by 3, right? Hence, what we can say is one of every 3 consecutive integers is divisible by 3. Let's take a look at next question, that is question number 6. Use Euclid's division algorithm to find HCF of 255 and 867. Prior to attempting this problem, I would like you to quickly recall Euclid's division algorithm. We have seen Euclid's division lemma. To obtain HCF of two positive integers c and d using Euclid's division algorithm, we have to follow the following steps. Apply Euclid's divisional lemma to C and D to find Q and R such that C equal to DQ plus R, where 0 less than or equal to R, that is less than D, right? When you do that, if you obtain R equal to 0, then D is going to be the HCF of C and D. In other case, what we have to do is we have to apply Euclid's division lemma to D and R. This process has to be repeated till you get R equal to 0. When R equal to 0, the corresponding D is going to be the HCF, right? Let's now go back to the problem. In this problem, C is 867 and D is 255, right? C has to be greater than D. So 867 can be written as 255 times 3 plus 102. As you see here, D is 255 and R is 102, right? Since R is greater than 0, what we have to do is we have to apply division lemma on 255 and 102. In that case, what we do is your D, that is 255, now becomes your C, and R, which is 102, that becomes your D, so that you can write again Euclid's division lemma, that is 255 equal to 102 times 2 plus 51. So the remainder is 51 again, it is non-zero. So we have to repeat the process. It means now you are going to apply Euclid's division lemma on 102 and 51. When you do that, you get 102 equal to 51 times 2 plus 0, right? Here, now you got remainder as 0. D equal to 51 is going to be your HCF. So I'll say now, since remainder R equal to 0, HCF of 255 and 867 is 51. Please note this point. Let's take a look at another problem. Using Euclid's algorithm, find HCF of 2048 and 960. your C is now 2048 and D is 960, right? So 2048 can be written as 960 times 2 plus 128. The remainder is 128, which is greater than 0. It means you have to now apply division lemma on 960 and 128, right? When you do that, 960 can be written as 128 times 7 plus 64. So now the remainder R is 64, which is also greater than 0. Hence we have to apply division lemma again on 128 and 64 this time. When you do that, 128 can be written as 64 times 2 plus 0, right? Since R equal to 0, the D, which is 64, is going to be the HCF. Let me write that. Since remainder R equal to 0, HCF of 2048 and 960 is 64. Let's take a look at another problem. Find HCF of 1260 and 7344 using Euclid's algorithm. I'm not going to solve this problem. You try to solve this. The answer you are going to get is 36. Please verify this answer. Let's take a look at next question. Question number 9. Express number 429 as a product of its prime factors. 429 can be written as 3 times 143, where 3 is the prime number. And 143 can be written as 11 times 13, where 11 and 13 both are prime numbers. So now 429 can be written as product of prime numbers, that is 3 times 11 times 13. Please take a note of this. Let's go to the next question. Question number 10. The sum of the exponents of prime factors in the prime factorization of 196 is what? We are asked to find. I am using a different method now. 196 can be divided with 2, which is the smallest prime number. When you divide, you get answer as 98. Let me divide this with 2 again. You get 49 as the answer. Now you can divide this with a prime number, that is 7, right? When you divide, you get 7 as the answer, which is a prime number. So we stop there and write 196 as 2 times 2 times 7 times 7. That can also be written as 2 square times 7 square. So the exponents here are 2 and 2, right? So sum of the exponents is going to be 2 and 2, that is 2 plus 2 equal to 4. This is what we are asked to find. The answer is going to be B. Let's go to the next question. The exponents of 2 in prime factorization of 144 is what we are asked to find. So 144, when you prime factorize, you get answer like this: 144 equal to 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 3, right? This can be written as 2 power 4 times 3 power 2, right? So now to answer the question, the exponent of 2 in prime factorization of 144 is 4, right? 2 power 4 is there as part of answer, right? That's why answer is going to be 4. Let's go to the next question, that is question number 12. Check whether 12 power n can end with the digit 0 for any natural number n. It appeared in two sets of year 2020. Prior to attempting this problem, I would like you to quickly recall fundamental theorem of arithmetic. Every composite number can be expressed as a product of primes, and the factorization is unique apart from the order in which the prime factors occur. For example, if you prime factorize 156, you can write it as 2 times 2 times 3 times 13, right? Instead of starting the division process with 2, if I start with 3, then you can write the prime factors for 156 as follows. And 156 can be written as 3 times 2 times 2 times 13, right? Instead, if I start with 13, the division process, then 156 can be written as 13 times 2 times 2 times 3, right? When you observe this, what you must have understood is the prime factors involved are the same, like 2, 2, 3, and 13, right? It means the factorization is unique, but their order is different. That's what fundamental theorem of arithmetic is saying. Every composite number can be expressed as a product of primes, and the factorization is unique apart from the order in which the prime factors occur. Let's go back to the question now. Check whether 12 power n can end with digit 0 for any natural number n is the question. 12 can be written as 2 square times 3, right? As you see here, the number to end with the digit 0, it has to have 5 as the prime factor. Please note this point. Whereas 12 has got factors like 2 times 2 times 3, right? It doesn't have 5 as the prime factor. Now, fundamental theorem of arithmetic already stated that prime factors of any composite number are going to be unique. It means prime factors for 12 are going to be unique. Those are going to be 2 times 2 times 3. It cannot be 5. So 5 is not a factor of 12. Hence, we can say that 12 power n cannot end with the digit 0 because 12 power n cannot have 5 as a prime factor. I hope you understood this. Please take a note of this point. Let's go to the next question. That is question number 13. The HCF of 135 and 225 is what? Is the question. HCF of two or more numbers is defined as product of the smallest power of each common prime factors in the numbers. Please note this. We'll see how are we going to do that. 135 can be divided with 5. You get 27 as the answer. Then divide that with 3. You get 9 as the answer. You divide that with 3. You get 3 as the answer. That is a prime number. So you have 5, 3, 3, 3 as the prime factors, right? Let me write 135 as 5 times 3 cube. Similarly, when you do the same thing for 225, it can be written as 225 equal to 5 square times 3 square. Please note this correction. Here it is not 135. 225 equal to 5 square times 3 square. The common prime factors involved are 5 and 3, right? And smallest power of 5 is 1, right? That is in part of 135. And smallest power of 3 is 2, that is part of 225. Please note that I have written 135 for 225 also. So now the HCF is going to be 5 times 3 square. That is equal to 45. So answer is going to be C, right? HCF of 135 and 225 is 45. Let's go to the next question. What is the HCF of smallest prime number and smallest composite number? Smallest prime number is 2 and smallest composite number is 4, right? Because 2 and 3 are prime numbers, 4 is the smallest composite number. It means, as per the question, we have to find HCF of 2 and 4, right? 2 can be written as 2 power 1 and 4 can be written as 2 power 2, right? So HCF of 2 is going to be, HCF of 2 and 4 is going to be 2 power 1, that is equal to 2. Please take a note of this. Let's go to the next question, question number 15. If HCF of 65 and 117 is expressible in the form of 65n minus 117, then find the value of n. 65 can be written as product of two prime numbers that are 5 and 13. 65 equal to 5 times 13. 117 can be written as 3 square times 13. Okay, as you see here, 13 is the only common factor involved. That's why HCF is going to be 13, right? And in the problem definition, it is given that HCF equal to 65n minus 117. When you equate that with 13 and simplify, you get 65n equal to 130. It means n equal to 2. Please take a note of this answer. Let's go to the next question, question number 16. Find the HCF of 612 and 1314 using prime factorization. I'm not going to solve this. You try to solve this problem, you will get answer as 18. Let's go to the next question, that is question number 17. Given that HCF of 135 and 225 equal to 45, find the LCM of 135 and 225. LCM is defined as follows. LCM of two or more numbers is defined as product of the greatest power of each prime factors in the numbers. Let's see what does it mean. 135 can be written as 5 times 3 cube. This is what we have seen, right? And 225 can be written as 5 square times 3 square. The prime factors involved are 5 and 3. Now see what are the greatest powers. Greatest power of 5 is 2, right? That is part of 225. And greatest power of 3 is 3, that is part of 135, right? So LCM is going to be product of those two, 5 square and 3 cube. So 5 square times 3 cube is going to be 675. So LCM of the numbers given is 675. There is another way to solve this problem. LCM times HCF can be written as product of the numbers given. It means when you substitute the numbers given 135 and 225 and HCF equal to 45, this becomes LCM times 45 equal to 135 times 225. When you simplify it, you get LCM as 675. I hope you understood this. Please take a note of this formula, LCM times HCF equal to product of the numbers. Let's go to the next question, that is question number 18. The LCM of two numbers is 182 and their HCF is 13. If one of the numbers is 26, find the other number. We have seen the formula just now. LCM times HCF equal to product of the numbers, right? That is going to be 182 times 13 equal to 26, one of the numbers given. I am calling the other number as A. So 182 times 13 is going to be equal to 26 times A. When you simplify it, you get the other number A as 91. Please note this point. Let's go to the next question, question number 19. The HCF and the LCM of 12, 21 and 15 respectively are, and we are given 4 options. We have to find the right answer. 12 can be written as 2 square times 3, right? Where 2 and 3 are the prime numbers. 15 can be written as 3 times 5. And 21 can be written as 3 times 7, where 3 and 7 are prime numbers. Now, the common prime factor involved is only 3, right? It means automatically HCF is going to be 3. And all prime factors involved are 2, 3, 5 and 7. Let's see their greatest powers so that we can obtain LCM of the given numbers. LCM is product of highest powers of each prime factors in the numbers, right? So LCM can be written as 2 square times 3 times 5 times 7, right? When you simplify it, you get answer as 420. It means HCF equal to 3 and LCM equal to 420. So the answer is choice 3. Let's go to the next question, question number 20. Find the largest number which on dividing 1251, 9377 and 15628 leaves remainders 1, 2 and 3 respectively. It means remainder of 1251 is 1. It means the number is 1251 minus 1, that is equal to 1250. It is completely divisible, right? Now, remainder of 9377 is 2 given. It means 9375 is completely divisible, right? Remainder of 15,628 is 3. It means 15,625 is completely divisible. The largest number that divides all these 3 numbers is their HCF. It means we have to find HCF of 1250, 9375 and 15,625. Right? You have to find this. I'm not going to solve this. The answer you are going to get is 625. Please verify your answer. You solve this problem and verify whether you're getting 625 as answer or not. Let's go to the next question, that is question number 21. On a morning walk, 3 persons step out together and their steps measure 30 centimeters, 36 centimeters, and 40 centimeters respectively. What is the minimum distance each should walk so that each can cover the same distance? Please note this point. In complete steps, you have to see these two. The distance has to be same and the steps have to be complete, right? It means we have to find LCM of these three numbers to find the same distance in complete steps. So you have to find LCM of number 30, 36 and 40. I'm not going to solve this. When you do that, you will get answer as 360. It means the minimum distance each should walk to cover the same distance in complete steps is 360 centimeters. Right? Let's go to the next question. That is question number 22. If HCF of 336 and 54 is 6, find the LCM of 336 and 54. Here, you can use HCF times LCM equal to product of the numbers formula and then find the answer. I'm not going to solve. The answer you are going to get is 3024. Please verify this. Let's go to the next question. That is question number 23. Write the smallest number which is divisible by both 306 and 657. The hint is the smallest number divisible by two numbers is their LCM. It means to answer this question, you have to find LCM of 306 and 657, right? I'm not going to do this problem. You solve it so that you will get answer as 22,338. You solve this and verify whether you're getting the same answer or not. Let's go to the next question, question number 24. Find after how many places of decimal the decimal form of number 27 divided by 2 power 3 times 5 power 4 times 3 square will terminate. Let's quickly take a look at a theorem on this. It is stated as follows. Let x be the rational number whose decimal expansion terminates. Then x can be expressed in the form of p by q, where p and q are co-prime numbers, and prime factorization of q is of the form 2 power n 5 power m, where n and m are positive integers. What does it mean to us? Let's take a look at that now. It means the denominator needs to be expressed in powers of 2 and 5 only so that the decimal expansion of the given number is going to terminate. I hope you got the point. So 27 divided by 2 cube times 5 power 4 times 3 square can be written now as 27 equal to 3 cube. And when you simplify it, the whole expression now becomes 3 divided by 2 cube times 5 power 4. Right? It means actually the denominator, we are in a position to express the denominator as 2 power n and 5 power m. Right? Let us make the powers of 2 and 5 the same. Why we are doing that? Let's understand that as you go. So when I do that, I'll write 3 times 2 because I'm making denominator 2 power 4 from 2 power 3, right? That's why in the numerator also I'm multiplying with 2. So 3 times 2 divided by 2 power 4 times 5 power 4. So now you have in the denominator, you have 2 and 5 with the same power, that is equal to 4, right? We know that 2 power 4 times 5 power 4 can be written as 10 power 4. And 3 times 2 in the numerator becomes 6. Now, the given expression, that is 27 divided by 2 cube times 5 power 4 times 3 square, becomes 6 by 10 power 4. It means it can be written as 0.0006, right? So to answer the question, after 4 decimal places, the decimal form of the given number is terminating, right? There is a shortcut to this. You don't need to do all this. Take a look at highest power of 2 and 5 in the denominator. So 2 has got 3. In the given problem definition, 2 has got power 3, whereas 5 has got power 4, right? So power of 5 is, what is your answer? Power of 5 is 4. It means after 4 decimal places, the decimal form of the given number will terminate. I hope you understood this. Let's go to the next question. That is question number 25. After how many decimal places will the decimal representation of the rational number 229 divided by 2 square times 5 power 7 terminates? As you see here, highest power of 2 and 5 in the denominator is power of 5, that is equal to 7, right? Straight away you can say that after 7 decimal places, the decimal representation of the given number terminates. Let's verify this. To verify this, all you have to do is you have to divide 229 with 2 power 2 times 5 power 7. When you do that, you will get answer as 0.0007328. Count the decimals or count the digits of after the point. You have 7, right? That's what it means. After 7 decimal places, the decimal expansion of given number terminates. Let's go to the next question. After how many decimal places will the decimal expansion of rational number 359 divided by 2 power 6 times 5 cube terminates? To answer this question, you see the highest powers of 2 and 5 in the denominator. Power of 2 is 6, that is the highest number, right? Whereas power of 5 is 3, which is smaller than 6. That's why you can say that after 6 decimal places, the decimal representation of the given number is going to terminate. If you want to verify this, you can simply do the division and see whether you are getting 6 decimal places or not. Let's go to the next question. That is question number 27. Write the number of zeros in the end of the number whose prime factorization is 2 square times 5 cube times 3 square times 17. If you want to get 0, it means that you have to have 10 as factor, right? So 2 square times 5 cube times 3 square times 17 now can be written as 2 square times 5 square times 5 times 3 square times 17. Why I am writing like this? I have written 5 cube as 5 square times 5 because I have 2 square already. So 2 square times 5 square is going to be 10 square, right? When you do that, you get 10 square times 5 times 3 square times 17 as the answer, right? So now you can simply say that you're going to get 2 zeros. 10 square is there. That's why number of zeros in the end of the number are going to be 2 because 10 square is 100, right? It means you have 2 zeros. If you want to verify, you can simply multiply the numbers given so that you are getting answer as 76,500. You have seen 2 zeros are there, right? It means whatever we have said just now is verified. Let's go to the next question. That is, prove that root 5 is an irrational number. It appeared in 2020 set number 2 and 4. We prove this by contradiction method. That's why it is called proof by contradiction. Let's assume that root 5 is a rational number, which is contradicting with the proof we have to do, right? We have to prove that root 5 is an irrational number, whereas we are assuming that root 5 is a rational number, right? If any number is a rational number, it can be expressed as a ratio of 2 integers, right? It means root 5 can be expressed as 2 integers r and s. Let me say that r and s have common factor other than 1. It means you can reduce the fraction r by s to its minimal form, right? You can do that. R by s becomes a by b when r and s are divided by the common factor. It means a and b are going to be co-prime numbers. Please note this point. Co-prime numbers means the numbers which have got only 1 as the common factor. No other number is a common factor. Please note this point. Now, let me write root 5 as a by b. When I rearrange it, I can write it as root 5 times b equal to a, right? Let me apply square on both the sides so that root 5b whole square becomes 5b square. That is going to be equal to a square, right? If I rearrange it, I can write it as b square equal to a square by 5, right? Since a and b are co-prime numbers, you can say that 5 is dividing a square now, right? You may recall a theorem on this. Let p be a prime number. If p divides a square, then p divides a, where a is a positive integer. Please take a note of this point. If p be a prime number, if p divides a square, then p divides a, where a is a positive integer. Since I said that 5 divides a square, as per this theorem, 5 divides a also, right? Please note this. So we can write a as 5 times c, where c can be any integer, right? We have just written that 5b square equal to a square, right? Now let me substitute a equal to 5c into this equation so that it becomes 5b square equal to 25c square, right? When you simplify it, you write it as b square equal to 5c square. It means I can write c square equal to b square by 5. It means that 5 divides b square. Now as per the theorem we have written, 5 divides b also. Please note this. We earlier said that 5 divides a. Now we are saying that 5 divides b also, right? It is in contrast with what we have said earlier. It is contradicting with the fact that a and b are co-prime numbers. When I said a and b are co-prime numbers, they have only one as the common factor, right? Whereas here, you said that 5 divides a and b also now. It means 5 is going to be a common factor, right? That's why it is contradicting with the basic assumption of a and b are co-prime numbers, right? This contradiction happens because the assumption we made, that is square root of 5 is a rational number, is incorrect. So what we have to now conclude is square root of 5 is an irrational number. It's not a rational number the way we have assumed. I hope you understood this. Let's go to the next question, that is question number 29. Prove that root 2 is an irrational number. This has appeared in 2020 compartment exam. Similar question, and even 2019 set number 1. Prove that root 3 is an irrational number. That has appeared in 2019 set number 3. I'm not going to solve these two problems. I'm not going to prove these two. You can do this by following the steps we have done for the previous problem. All you have to do is wherever 5 is there, you have to change that with 2 in the case of square root of 2 problem. In the case of square root of 3 problem, you have to change number 5 with 3. And you have to follow identical steps so that you will be in a position to prove that root 2 is an irrational number and root 3 is an irrational number. Please do this so that you understand the concept better. Let's go to the next question. Show that 5 plus 2 root 7 is an irrational number where root 7 is given to be an irrational number. It is already given that root 7 is irrational number. We have to show that 5 plus 2 root 7 is an irrational number. This also we start with proof by contradiction method only. Let's assume that 5 plus 2 root 7 is a rational number. When you do that, I can write 5 plus 2 root 7 as ratio of R and S, where R and S are integers, right? If R and S have common factor other than 1, then I can divide both R and S with that common factor so that R by S can be written as A by B. where A and B are going to be co-prime numbers. Means their factor, common factor is only 1. Right? Now, let me write 5 plus 2 root 7 equal to A by B. Instead of R by S, we are now writing it as A by B. When you rearrange it, you can write it as 2 root 7 equal to A by B minus 5. You further rearrange such that it can be written as A minus 5B divided by B, right? I'm further rearranging it such that I can write root 7 equal to A minus 5B divided by 2B, right? Since A and B are integers, A minus 5B divided by 2B is going to be a rational number, right? A minus 5B is going to be an integer and 2B is also going to be another integer. That's why A minus 5B divided by 2B is going to be a rational number. It means, as per our assumption, root 7 is a rational number. Whereas in the problem definition, it is given that root 7 is an irrational number, right? It means whatever assumption we made is contradicting with the problem definition given itself, right? That's why we conclude that 5 plus 2 root 7 is an irrational number. We say that our assumption is wrong. The initial assumption is wrong. That's why we conclude that 5 plus 2 root 7 is an irrational number. Let's go to the next question, question number 31. Prove that 2 plus 5 root 3 is an irrational number given that root 3 is an irrational number. This is identical. It is similar to the problem we have solved earlier, right? You can solve the problem by attempting, by going through the same steps as we have done earlier. As you see here, prove that 2 plus 3 root 3 is an irrational number when it is given that root 3 is an irrational number. This problem also can be solved by following the same steps. Show that 3 plus root 7 by 5 is an irrational number given that root 7 is irrational. You can solve this problem also by following the same steps. I'm not going to prove all this. You do this so that you get better understanding of the concept. Let's go to the next question. That is question number 32. 2 plus square root of 5 by 3 is dash number is the question. We know that sum or difference of a rational number and an irrational number is going to be always irrational. As per this, since root 5 is an irrational number, we can simply say that 2 plus root 5 divided by 3 is an irrational number. Other point you may like to note is the product and quotient of a rational number and an irrational number is always irrational. Please note this point. I hope you like the video. Please subscribe to our channel, eCBSE Online Classes on YouTube, and follow us on Facebook. Thank you.